that we need to remember that there's an option for the poor, that we as a people of God, like Jesus, have to have a preferential option for. What does that mean? The preferential option for the poor. What that means is that we look at the poor and we see that it's our responsibility to alleviate the suffering that the poor endure. That's our responsibility to protect the rights of those who don't have the ability to protect their own rights. Pope Benedict has taught that love for widows and orphans, prisoners, and the sick and needy of every kind, and it is an essential to the church as a ministry of the sacraments and preaching of the gospel. That, as the bishop said in another document, it's part of the fabric of who we are. It's part of our preaching of the gospel, that we love our neighbors, that we protect widows and orphans, prisoners, the sick and the needy of every kind. That's a fundamental part of who we are, and it's a part of preaching the gospel. They conclude this section by saying, the bishop says, leaders of the church in the United States, we bishops have the duty to apply these moral principles to key public policy decisions facing our nation, outlining directions on issues that have important and moral ethical dimensions. More detailed information on policy directions adapted by our bishops' conference can be found in part 2 of this document. That's why I urge you to get it, because it becomes a little bit more clear, more directly addressing some of the issues of today, these principles that I've just gone over with you. They conclude this section by saying, building a world of respect for human life and dignity, where justice and peace prevail, requires more than just political commitment. Individuals, families, businesses, community organizations, and government all have a role to play. Participation in political life, in light of fundamental moral principles, is an essential duty for every Catholic and all people of goodwill. One of the things you're going to notice if you read through this document, and you go through some of the issues that bishops are talking about, such as human life, marriage and family life, promoting peace, freedom of religion, preferential option for poor, and economic justice, that these are all issues that we face today, and they go into great detail on some of these issues. But the most important thing that you find when you go through this document, you'll see very quickly that neither political party encompasses all these principles. That there are some things we find in the Republican Party, like the sacredness of human life, that the destruction of the unborn child is always an intrinsic evil. The euthanasia and mercy killing is always an intrinsic evil. But then you'll find that some areas of the Republican Party ignore issues such as a preferential option for the poor, or that the promoting of capital punishment is part of the Republican platform. On the other hand, if you go into the Democratic Party, you'll see that the sanctity of human life takes a big hit, especially with the promotion of legal abortion, and on even the nod to euthanasia and assisted suicide. That on the Democratic Party, the sanctity of the family unit is coming under attack, where they promote the right of marriage between men and between women, and not involving the opposite sex. But on the other hand, the Democratic Party has a great history of preferential option for the poor, of coming up with ways of alleviating the suffering of the poor and the hungry and the homeless, of eliminating capital punishment. So you see that if we're going to be faithful Catholics, we can't just rely on ideology. That there's a point where ideology breaks with faithful discipleship. That ideology, in fact, is a worldly concept. That when we find ourselves 100% lockstep with either political party, we need to rethink where we're getting our information from, and what types of teachings we're following. The Catholic Church and the social teaching of the Catholic Church transcends both political realities, both political ideologies. It's neither far right nor it's far left. It's not something in the middle either. It's some new way of looking at the world. It's a new worldview, a different worldview that takes in all the aspects of the gospel teachings of Jesus, takes in all the principles of Catholic social teaching, all the tradition of the Catholic Church, from the beginning of the church up until time. It's evolved in ways that we can see, especially on the issue of capital punishment. Church used to allow under strict circumstances the use of capital punishment to protect society. There's no other way, the church used to teach, for society to protect itself than the use of capital punishment can be justified. The church has since rethought that, beginning with St. John Paul II, when he said that principle, with today's technology and our ability to separate violent criminals from society, that the rare instance of capital punishment is virtually non-existent. And it comes up to the point that Francis made when he visited the United States, that there's simply no reason why the United States should continue the practice of executing criminals, that there's no point to it. The only real reason that anybody can give for the effectiveness of capital punishment is revenge. Some people say it brings closure to victim families. It doesn't. And it only is an act of vengeance that the church reminds us vengeance belongs to God, and it's not the property of the government to take human life, whatever human life. That all taking of innocent human life is always intrinsically evil, but even a taking of not so innocent life should be avoided. That's something we just can't do anymore as 21st century Catholics. This document, again, goes in quite detail on a lot of these issues, promoting justice and encountering violence. There's a whole section on that. There's a part about combating unjust discrimination. Discrimination based on race, religion, sex, ethnicity, disabling condition, or age. These are grave injustices and affronts to human dignity. Any type of discrimination, especially on race, religion, sex, ethnicity, and disabling condition, age, are intrinsic evils. That we treat everyone with dignity. That we treat everyone as a child of God, and every person enjoys that dignity that comes from being a child of God. We are God's creation, each one of us. God loves each one of us without compromise, without any type of conditions put on that. Unconditional love is what we get from God, and where that comes, that discrimination simply is a violation of the dignity of the human person. So I hope that I've helped perked your interest is really what I hope, that you'll take time to go onto the website. You'll take time to I'm going to give you that link in just a few minutes. That you'll take time to look at the link. That you'll take time to write it down. Go online. Go on the bishop's website. Click on the link. It's right there. On their website. You can read the document. There's also a little video that kind of gives you a synopsis of the document. It's important to read the document all the way through. It's about 40 pages long, which isn't all that long, but it really goes into details of some of the things that I've talked about very briefly. Again, it centers on the four principles of Catholic social teaching: the dignity of the human person, the common good, subsidiarity, and solidarity. That these aren't just things that we ought to try to strive for. That these issues aren't things that are important, when we get around to it. This is part of who we are as disciples of Christ. This is who we are as Catholic Christians, that there's no way for us to get around these issues, and there's no justification for ignoring these issues. Again, not every issue carries the same weight. The sanctity of human life is foundational. The taking of innocent human life is always intrinsically evil. But that doesn't mean we get to ignore all the other issues just because one candidate might say that, well, okay, I'm against the taking of human life in abortion and euthanasia. That's a good starting point, and then we start there, and then we look at all the other issues and where do these issues form. You may decide, especially this year, perhaps that maybe none of the two leading candidates can get your vote. Frankly, that's what I've decided. I've decided that I have to go a different way. That neither candidate embodies for me enough of the Catholic principles to warrant my vote. And I think that's an important issue also, that sometimes as Catholics we tend to overlook some morally grave issues to promote other morally grave issues. And I think we need to really be careful that we're not being too quick to accept the whole package of one political party while rejecting certain issues of social teaching. And that may be seeking out some other way of voting, or even just protesting that the choices aren't good enough on either side. You may find that one side is better for you, and that's okay. I'm not trying to talk you into anything. Vote your conscience. But important, the only way you can really vote your conscience in any significant way is first to have an informed conscience. And to have an informed conscience, you have to look at what are the issues and what does the church teach about these issues. What is the church teaching, and how does it fit into these principles of Catholic social teaching? The church has a lot to say about a lot of these social issues. The church has a lot to say about a lot of the issues we face as Americans in the 21st century. And especially, the church has a lot to say what are the issues in this election cycle. And again, I'm not just talking about the presidential election. I'm talking about the election for senators, for congresspeople, for mayors, for town councilmen. Everything from the presidency down to the local candidates, it's important that we know where they stand on a lot of these issues and where their stance fits in or does not fit in with Catholic social teaching. So again, I urge you to go to the website, find the document, click it, download it, read it online, print it. I downloaded and printed it out. Go through it and see where you might have already decided who you're going to vote for in most of the candidates that are running. Look through it anyway and see. The other issue that the bishops remind us of, that if we are a member of a political party, it's also our responsibility to make that party better. So maybe we're accepting one candidate, but we have to really address and hold the candidate responsible for the other parts of Catholic social teaching that they might not be promoting. So they might be promoting one really important issue, but they're neglecting the others. If we're going to be part of that party, we need to help them do better on the other issues. So it's important to read the document, take the document, look at it, even if you've already made up your mind, to see how you can work to make your party better, to make your party more in keeping with the teachings of the Catholic Church, especially the social teaching of the Catholic Church and the four principles of social teaching, the principles of dignity of the human person, the common good, subsidiarity, and solidarity. Now, thank you and good night. And before you leave, we're going to put up that link to the website. So please get a pen and pencil and write it down. I'll leave it on for a while so that you can get it. Thank you. Good night.